Hi everyone, Lisa Gifford here, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Martelli knot bag, and this is our project right here. Very simple to do. The supplies that you're going to need to be able to make this project is you're going to need the Martelli template. You're going to need some marking tools. I've got some chalk or one of our erasable marking pencils or even the Martelli pencil here. You're going to need some scissors or some snips. This project does work best with a 28mm rotary cutter. Of course, you're going to need the Martelli template, and there's a couple of things I'm going to show you on how to get this template ready to go. You're going to need about 2 yards of fabric, or excuse me, a yard of fabric, 2 half-yard pieces if you're going to have 2 colors, because this is actually a reversible project. So you could have the inside be the outside. I mean, you could flip it in and out to whatever you want. Now, that all depends. If you are using maybe a directional fabric, then you might need to have a little bit more than a half a yard for each fabric. So basically about a half a yard of 2 different fabrics, or 2/3 of a yard if you find yourself going with a directional fabric. Pretty much everything here that I've done in sample wise is pretty much non-directional, except maybe this one right here. So we're going to go over all of that. I'm going to teach you a couple little tricks that's not in the instructions. When you get the Martelli template, it's actually going to come with the full written instructions with it. But there's a little trick that I've learned that is not written in here, but I'm going to show you in this video today that's going to make this easier. And that is where you're going to grab the Martelli glue stick. And that's going to help with one of the steps. It's going to make it so much easier. And if you look at the instructions, it's actually the very last step. But I'm going to bring that step forward and make so this project goes together much quicker. So the first thing that you're going to do when you get your template is that I want to go ahead and get you prepped for it. You'll see it actually has a couple of cut lines in here, so you might want to go ahead and get those pre-cut. They're right here. I'm going to go ahead and take my marking pencil, and I'm just going to just draw over those so you can see those are the cut lines so that you can use your rotary cutter. Now there's another little line that's right here. So you're going to have to mark your fabric on both sides of the fabric with this. So all 4 pieces, because you're cutting out 4, you're going to have to mark it right here. Now you can use a marking pencil, chalk if you're using some of the darker colors, maybe the erasable one, or the one that irons out, or the one with water soluble. Or you could just use your scissors and snips, and you can just snip like a little 1/8 of an inch. It's just a marker. It's a start and stop point, so that when you go to do your sewing, you know where you're going to stop and you know where you're going to start. So that's very important. And then I went ahead and I marked my area that this is going to be on the fold. Now you can go ahead and put this on the fold if you want it to be a solid color on the front, or a solid color, front and back. But if you wanted to make it scrappy, then just go ahead and cut all 4 pieces out, all 8 pieces. It would be 8, because you would be able to sew them together on this fold line, and you'd have a totally different look. Now the last marking is this one up here. This here is a guide so that if you want to make your bag to have the shorter piece, the shorter part of the bag, like this one right here. This is what makes it the knot bag. So you've got the smaller loop or smaller handle that the larger handle loops through. Now you can go ahead and not shorten it. You could have 2 long handles if you want, but we're going to show it where you've got the shorter handle. So this is cut at 4 inches down. I've actually done a couple where it's a little bit less, like this one. I only cut it at 3.5 inches. Again, this is just a guide. You can cut it to whatever length that you want it to be. I did one at 3.5, I did some at 4, so it's up to you on how you would want that to be done. Now, the next step is go ahead and get your fabrics. So go ahead and get your fabrics together, and you're going to get them prepped and ironed and all pressed out, get all the wrinkles out of them, and then you're going to cut your pieces. I'm going to be using fabric, I'm going to have it on the fold. So I've got to cut out 2 linings and 2 outer fabrics. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to set these aside. See how cute these are? They are fully reversible, very easy to do. And I have my instructions with me. So I'm going to go follow everything along just like you, but I'm going to show you that little bitty hint that's going to make things a little bit better. So I do have some prep work done, so I'm going to show you how to use the actual template. So this fabric here had a little bit of a directional to it. I wanted my flames to go up and down, not side to side. So I'm cutting it a little bit different than you would normally cut, because I think a lot of times I would have it cut like this, but I didn't want my flames going across it. I wanted the flames to kind of go up and down. So I just fold my fabric over, smooth it all out, and then I get my template and I'm just going to lay it on here. Now I'm going to turn this to me to make it easier for me to cut. I'm going to save on some of that fabric because I've already cut one. I'm cutting two. Now you could cut two at a time, but I'm just going to cut one at a time. I find it just is a little bit more precise if I have it done this way. So you're just going to cut all the way around. And you got your cut lines right here. And again, this project does work better if you use a 28 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this excess off. And set this aside for another project. Again, I've just got everything on the fold. And now I'm just going to start here, go around this curve, and come across, and then you'll see me going to the cut lines. Just a little bit of finagling here. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that curve, you can trace it and then cut it with scissors. If you're not comfortable with using the 28 millimeter, it does kind of click a little bit as you're going around. Now I'm getting ready to cut, so go till I get to my first cut line. So I'm just going to cut straight into that cut line. And now I'm going to come back into my cut line. If you'll notice, my hands are never in the front of my blade. And I'm just going to cut, rotate around, and do my final cut. So you're going to cut 2 linings and 2 outer fabrics. Now, before I even pick it up off the fabric, I have it just sitting right here. You can do 2 things. You can go ahead and just take your marking pencil and mark it. It would have been better if I would have had the right sides together because I'm going to need to mark on the wrong sides. Or another way that I have done is just taken my scissors and I just lift it up and just put a little bitty 1/8 of an inch nip right there where that line is. So here's my little nip right here. So that's my start and stop for sewing. Now I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So here it is, fully cut. Now I could go ahead and lay this back on here and trim off which side, but I need to make sure I'm cutting it on the right side. So if this is the wrong side, I need to be able to be sure to cut it so that it would be like this, being sewed together. So I'm laying these 2 on top of each other. So I know that this is the side that needs to be cut. And I believe I had measured this one at 3.5 inches off. But you can follow the line on here and just cut. Or like I'm doing right here, I'm doing 3.5 inches. I'm going to actually use my template, 1, 2, 3.5. Line it up right here and just trim it off right there. Because these are going to be sewed right sides together. So now here's the little hint. You're going to do that to the lining and to the outside. Now if you take a look at the instructions, at the very last thing, on item number 11, it says, fold under and press the open raw edges of the handles 1/4 inch and top stitch 1/8 inch around the bag to finish. Well, what it's talking about is this section right here, because we're going to be sewing all of this, then we flip it out. But right here and right here, see, this is all together, the lining and the outside piece. So it makes it really difficult to fold this under and press it. I actually did it already to the lining, and I actually did it before I actually started sewing the two pieces together, because all I could do was just pull it out, sew the two pieces together, and everything laid back in. So it was just something that I saw that made things go a little bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to the wrong, where I got the wrong side up. And we're looking at these edges that are on the outside, not the inner curve, but the outer parts of the handle. And it starts about the place right here where you did your little marking or your nip. And you're just going to grab the glue stick. And what I did was I just kind of ran a little bead of glue along this edge right here, all the way down to that mark, that little registration mark. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold it over 1/4 of an inch all along that edge. It's going to make it so much easier when you go to finishing and top stitching this edge. So here this one's done, and I'm going to go ahead and do it onto the other side. And I could hit this with the iron. Again, I'm finding my little mark right here, the little registration mark that we had marked, because we're going to sew from here to here. We don't sew this side, we don't sew this side. These sides are left open till the very end when you top stitch. So it doesn't hurt to go ahead and do this little piece right here. So I'm just laying some glue on here. And Martelli does have these amazing glue sticks. We actually use them, a lot of people use them for English paper piecing, but they work very nicely for this. It's not heavy, it's not going to gunk up your needles. Just putting a line of glue on here. And then I'm going to just slowly just fold this over about 1/4 of an inch and just press it down. It's going to really make a world of difference towards the end. You'll see. Coming along this little curve right here, getting to where I'm almost to that mark. Keeping it at 1/4 and stopping right there at that mark. And I've done it on both sides, and I've already got it prepared for the other one. I've already done it for the very first one that I had cut out. All right, so then that's going to make step number 11 so much faster. I didn't talk about another thing that you're going to need. You're going to need some clips. Clips are going to really be helpful for this, or if you have some pins, if you want to use some pins in place of that. Okay, so the first step that you do after you get all your pieces cut out is that you're going to take your two fabrics and you're going to place them right sides together, your outer pieces and your lining pieces, and you're going to sew them in 3 places. You're going to sew them here, across the top of the handle here, and across the top of the short handle, and then from that dart you're going to sew all the way around to the other dart, and you're going to be sure to back tack at both of these spots right here. Once you have it sewed, then we're going to clip your curves about 1 inch to 1/2 inch all the way around, just a little bit clips about 1/8 of an inch to release or relax that seam. It'll lay so much smoother if you take the time to clip those. So that will be the first step. So we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to go ahead and sew the outer piece, and you're going to repeat that same thing for sewing your lining. Oh, and here's another little hint. Since we're sitting here by the iron, the piece that you had just glued, if you want, you could go ahead and tap that with an iron. It will set it just a little bit, maybe dry it just a little bit quicker, but it's not so stiff, it's not so hard that it is not removable, because you're going to have to pull it apart when you go sew that top seam. So I'm just setting that glue and setting that seam a little bit with the iron. Just giving a little press. Okay. So now you're going to take your two pieces and you're going to line them up right sides together. I would go ahead and undo these two pieces right here where you glued it. Just open it up. You could probably not have to do that. If you fold it over a core, they should line up exactly. I'm just going to leave them folded over and just sew a 1/4 inch across the top. Be sure to back tack on each ends of the top of the handles. And you could take the time and clip and pin these if you wanted. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and line up your fabric, and this is where you could use some pins or some clips, and you're going to clip it or pin it all the way around. I'm just going to line it up, and you're going to start at that mark that you had first made, and you're going to sew all the way around a 1/4 inch. Again, you're going to repeat this to the lining also. I'm just lining up those marks. And we're going to back tack right here. Okay, so you should have that done for both your lining and your outer piece. So here I already have my lining already done. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your scissors and you're going to clip all the way around. So you only need to do, don't be just clip about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch all the way around, being careful to not clip into your stitch. This is going to make it so when you do have it flipped right side out, that this will lay a little bit smoother. And you're going to repeat this for the outer piece and for your lining. So I'm just going to continue clipping. Now you can also probably hit this with some pinking shears. That would probably be something else that you could do. Just takes a minute right here. So it's really good to have some really good little snippets to help you with that. I'm going to hit this with an iron, kind of get that little seam that's out right here. Press that down. Relax those stitches into the fabric. It should be good to go. So once you have that done, then you're going to take your lining and you're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. Because now we're going to do our next step. I'm going to grab my instructions so I can follow it around, because everything else is pretty much here at the sewing machine. So we are already have made it to step 5. So we're going to go now to step 6. You've turned the lining piece right side out, and we're going to insert it into the outer fabric that is still, inside out. It still has right sides together. So we're going to take this piece and we're going to place it onto the inside here. Pushing it all the way in. making sure that we have the short side with the short side, the short handle with the short handle, long handle with the long handle. Now this is where you're going to need some clips and some pins. All right, so let me grab my clips. So now this is step number 7. So now we're going to pin or clip our inner piece, our inner part of the handle. And we're going to clip those all together and then we're going to sew those. So what I do is I just kind of grab my pieces and I am lining up the seam on the top. I kind of try to get them to nest a little bit, so I have one seam going one way and one seam going the other. And when I get the very first one ready to go and nested, I'm going to go ahead and put a clip, or I'm going to pin it right there. Then I take that and I go all the way down to, I already take it right to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and get the other side clipped. So I'm going to match up the seam on this one too. So I have it going this way. And I like to nest the seams that's on the top of the handles first. I'm not looking at the outside because we're going to be sewing the inner side first. So I'm going to just clip this. Now I'm going to work it away because it's a continuous seam. It's going to be starting here, going down and around to now to this side, and then down and around and up to the other side. So it's one big continuous seam. I'm actually going to be doing this on a flatbed machine, but if you have a machine that has a removable arm, this would make it probably a little bit easier, maybe not quite as awkward. So I'm just going to take the time and just do some clipping, matching up my edges, kind of moving it around, try and get everything all lined up. I'm just matching up the edges and putting a clip in it. And just working myself around. And one more. That should have everything. All right, so we just got it clipped all around. Got the bag inside. And making sure it's down in there really good. Got everything all clipped to go all the way around this inner section. Now I am not working again like I don't have a removable arm. I'm working on a flatbed, so I do it backwards. If you're doing with a removable arm, you would be able to sew it from this side. With the one that's a flatbed, I actually sew it from the inside. This is a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, so I just find a spot and I am going to start sewing. It can be at the top, it could be at the bottom, anywhere that you want to just go ahead and start to sew all the way around, because you're going to find yourself coming back to where you started. So be sure to do a good back tack and off you go. Okay, so that's how it should look right now. Sew it all the way around. So now we got to do some more clipping. So I'm just going to clip this curve right here. I'm not clipping the long pieces of the handle, just these little clipped areas of the curve. And again, that's just so it will help it to relax when we have it all turned to rights. So just take a minute just to get all these little areas clipped. And one more right here. And let's get to the other side. Just be careful to not clip your stitches. Okay, if you can see, I got it all clipped all through here. And I am going to take just a second and I'm going to relax that stitching. Just kind of hit it with the iron. Set those seams for a second. All right. Now we have just finished up step 9, so we're going through step 10. So it's going to be these areas that's right here that we have these big, huge openings. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and pull your fabric out through one of those handles. You're going to get it all the way out. It's going to look something like this. So you're going to have your lining and you're going to have your outer piece all right here. Go ahead and kind of press out your outer piece a little bit. Just kind of press it out. I like to kind of hit that with an iron for just a second. Get everything smoothed out. Now if you look, once we got that done, we got everything pressed and everything's pushed out. Now it's telling us to fold under and press the raw edges of the handles. Well, we had already done that. We did that step right here. So I'm going to take my lining and I'm going to go ahead and push it into the bag. This is going to save so much time where we had done that step, because it was torturous to try to fold over those little pieces when it's all together like this. By having already doing that, now we just have to just clip it or clip them together and just top stitch. You'll see it'll be so much faster. So I'm pushing all of my lining into the bag. I'm just going to kind of roll back this edge right here. We'll top stitch that in a second. But first we're going to top stitch, we're going to sew these edges, these areas of the handle closed. So what we're going to do, getting our clips back out, we're going to line up these edges and we're going to clip it. Just kind of hold everything in place, but because we've already folded over our seams, we don't have to fight with that. We're just matching up the edges and putting a clip here. When you get down to this little section right here that's at the bottom where we had the darts, the original registration marks, you're just going to match up the seams right here. Put a clip right there. Hold it all in. Because we're going to top stitch all the way around about 1/8 of an inch on the inside and on the outside of the handles. All right, so this side's all clipped. Now I'll go ahead and get to the smaller handle. And put one down here on the bottom. Looking to see which direction my seam is, kind of nest up the seams. Put a couple more clips in, hold everything in place. Getting ready to do that top stitching. Okay, so I got everything all clipped. So now I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around here. So I'm going to change out my foot. And I am going to put on the blind hem guide foot. It has a little guide that's running right here in the middle. If you can see that right here. So I'm going to put this foot over on, and I'm going to move my needle all the way over to 1.5. Actually, I'm going to move it to 5. I'm going to get this where I have it where it's going to be giving me about 1/8 of an inch top stitch. I'm going to raise my stitch length up to around 3.4, 3.5. And we're going to top stitch around. So we're going to top stitch on this side. We're going to go ahead and top stitch on this side, and then we're going to finish up top stitching the middle part of the bag. So again, because I am not using I'm on a flatbed, I sew from the inside out. If you have a removable arm, you'd be able to stitch right here along on the outside. So I'm going to start up here on the top, at the top of the handle, lining up my edges. And we're going to get the top stitching done. When I come to this point right here, I'm just going to come to it, and I'm going to just sort of get to that stitch, drop my stitch, my needle down at that stitch, and then I'm just going to kind of pivot and come back up. That one done. Now we'll go ahead and get the small one done. I'll start at the very top. This one's a little bit trickier because it's just a smaller area to work with. The key thing is keep your fingers out of the way. This would not be good. All right, so I'm coming to where it pivots down. So I'm gonna make sure everything is tucked in. It's a little bit smaller space that we're working on here. just a little bit fiddly. Now we're going to come back up. That one done. Now the last thing is to just do the top stitch all the way around this edge right here. So you might want to push everything out, maybe hit it with the iron to make sure everything is all the way pressed out. We'll bring it over here and just kind of hit it a little bit. Just kind of securing those edges just a little. It'll make it a little bit easier for all of our top stitching. All right, okay, I'm going to start up here near the handle part. And it's going to be one big continuous loop. So you might have to clip a few threads here and there, or you could bury them if they were longer, but these are kind of short, so I'm just going to clip them off right here. And there we go. Just going to give it a little push out. Everything should be. You do not top stitch the big loop area at all. You just top stitch around the handle. So let's go back to the cutting table. So here it is. Here's the one that we just made. All ready to go. And all you have to do is just take your little handle and loop it through there, and you got yourself the perfect little knot bag. And that was all the instructions. Very simple to do. I hope you enjoyed making this with me. And be sure to go to martellinotions.com and pick this up. Also, if you have any questions, be sure to email me at learn@martellinotions.com if you have any questions, and I'd love to hear from you. sure to pick this up. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.